Kirby Smart talked about how he wants the dogs to play in big games today. This is one of many topics he talked about at the SEC's spring meetings in Destin. He said, "We've been very aggressive in terms of scheduling opponents out in the future that make great matchups because we want the University of Georgia to play in big games." And this is kind of the point after the fact that he's talking about. So whether it's another SEC opponent or a Power Five opponent that excites our fan base and attracts our fan base, then so be it. But I don't have a stance in terms of what's best because of the changes as our because that changes as our conference changes. So there's a lot going on at the same time here right now in SEC world. There are multiple moving objects, and really the league and Greg Sankey and company are trying to catch a falling knife, which is easier said than done. The league wants, and Kirby talked about this today, he talked about winning as many national championships as possible. And honestly, that's not really been a problem from 2015 on. But moving forward in 2022 and beyond, we don't know what the college football playoff is going to look like in the future. We don't know what the schedule for the SEC is going to look like in the future. Is it going to be 8 games? Is it going to be 9? There's a lot that we just don't know. And I think that's really why Kirby is saying what he's saying. He's saying, we want to play big games. We just, it doesn't have to be any particular type of game. I don't know that we're going to have divisions in the future. It feels like we won't. So there's a lot of change right now. And for all of the moaning and groaning about NIL and the transfer portal, this really, this is at the heart of the future of college football. And the reason why is because this is going to be dictated by the powers that be in television. This was a huge game for Georgia. I mention it because so many people have gotten this on here. If you've not gotten DAWGSTRUCTION, make sure you're checking out the link down below. I know all of y'all haven't gotten it because I know how many people watch these videos each month, and everybody hasn't gotten one yet. Make sure you support us by checking that out. Kirby's point is, hey, because it's very possible that we could be headed to a 9 game schedule in the SEC. In fact, it looks like that's what's going to happen. The the question really is how that 9 game schedule will work in terms of, will it be one rival and 8 rotating games, or will it be three, for lack of a better term, rivals, and 6 rotating games? Because in that scenario, you would have 12 teams that you would play over a 2 year period, and you would keep the other three. So you would cycle through the entire league in a 2 year period. I suspect that's where we're headed, is the 3 and 6, because there's just too many big game guarantees. Like for instance, when you have the ability to have Texas play Texas A&M and Oklahoma, you're not gonna skip that. You're not gonna ditch Georgia Auburn. You're not gonna ditch either Auburn. Excuse me. You're not gonna ditch either Alabama LSU or Alabama Tennessee. You're just not gonna ditch those games. So that's what TV wants, and TV is going to get what it wants. I think to some degree, you're going to have to make a decision like, are you keeping Alabama LSU, or are you keeping Alabama Tennessee? My guess is they're going to keep Alabama LSU. But Kirby's whole point is, we want to play these big games, no matter if it's Texas Georgia in the SEC or Texas Georgia out of the league. That game is already scheduled. No matter if it's Texas Oklahoma, Georgia Oklahoma in the league or out of the league, that game is already scheduled. UCLA Georgia is scheduled in the future. Clemson Georgia is scheduled in the future. I wonder if we're going to see that after 2024. Florida State, Georgia is scheduled in the future. I wonder if we're going to see that game. Ohio State, Georgia is scheduled in the future. I wonder if we're going to see that game. There's only so many, games you can play. And if we're sticking with a 12 game regular season, and you're still continuing to play Georgia Tech, which I think will happen, then you have 2 games to wiggle with. When you have 3 games to wiggle with, that's a little bit easier to schedule big games than 2 game situation, right? I don't know if I said that right, but when you got 3 to play with, it's easier than with 2. However, there are plenty of times in the future where Georgia and Kirby have scheduled extremely aggressively. I mean, extremely aggressively. I think if my math is right, that in the future they play both Florida State and Clemson in the same year. Well, I mean, that that's going to be a challenging situation. Excuse me, it's Texas, Florida State, and Georgia Tech in the same year in 2028. In 2027, they play Florida State and Georgia Tech, UCLA in 26, UCLA and Tech in 25. 24 is the Georgia Clemson game along with Georgia Tech. And then next year um, at Oklahoma. So, Georgia OU is going to be a conference game in the future. But you see the complexity here. We've got multiple things going on at the same time. And again, back to what Kirby said, we want Georgia to play in big games. And when you take a look at the last 10 years of football in this country, there are 3 teams that, 4 that really have jumped out in terms of people watching them. Georgia, this is not in order. Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State have done that off the backs of, generally speaking, the regular season, although national championship games and playoffs make a huge difference in any of these numbers. Clemson has done that by playing in 4 national championship games. That has gotten them about another 100,000 views that they wouldn't normally have got. Um, so those are, those are brand names that college football wants to see. In the regular season, Georgia and Alabama have massive draws, just the way Ohio State does. I mean, those 3 schools in non-playoff settings, they draw a huge amount of fans watching every single game they play. So that you're making even more of that when you play the Chick-fil-A kickoff game with Gary Stokan and those guys. When you play the game in Charlotte with Clemson. I mean, Georgia has approached their time under Kirby Smart within reason, playing a huge game at the start of the season. Now, think about it. In 16, that was North Carolina. 17, that was Notre Dame. 18, we didn't really have that. Okay, there wasn't a big game just in that season. 19, obviously, the Notre Dame game, week 3, that was huge. 2020, it was going to be Virginia, COVID. And then 21, you've got Clemson. This season, you've got Oregon. I think 23, you've got Oklahoma on the road. Clemson in 24, 25, UCLA. So Georgia's stacked these games. Kirby's stacked these games. And, they've yet to lose a game like that. And we'll just see if they can keep that up against Oregon. We'll see. But this moment in the league is really not like any other moment we've seen in the last 30 years. The run up to divisions was completely new for the league. To some degree, when Texas A&M and Mizzou came into the league in 12, that was different too. But we're about to get rid of the divisions and we're about to add another SEC game. And there's reasons why, because that gives the league's partners and Disney more inventory to sell. I don't think we're going to see a 9-game schedule before Disney is in control of this thing in 2024. We might not see it before Texas and OU come in 2025. Um, and it looks more and more like both the Big 12 and Texas and OU are going to live out this contract, and we won't see them until 2025. That's what it looks like. It looks like the SEC is going to stay on CBS until 2024. I mean, all of the moving parts of a season ago, this time a year ago, they're not there right now. It looks like everybody's standing pat. So the real change is going to be in 25. That's when the Disney contract will have started. Texas and OU will be in the league, and then a season after that, the college football playoff, we will know if it will explode and not exist or if we will have a 12-team playoff. But right now, Kirby and them are swimming kind of blind. And all they can do is worry about this season. He talked about this that as well, but his main point here is we want Georgia to play in big games.